artist behind the epic melodies, songs, and beats. Celebrating the best new music from around the world. This is the A State of Trance podcast.
Hey, what's up? My name is Ruben Ronde and welcome to a new A State of Trance podcast. And it doesn't happen a lot that we have someone from the USA here in the studio. So it's a pleasure to welcome Morgin Madison. How are you doing, man?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Finally, you are releasing your album Odyssey this weekend on Enhanced Music. We're going to talk about that in just a little bit. But first, I always want to start about the beginning of the beginning. Where did Morgin Madison fall in love with dance music?
Oh, God. 2010 on a ski trip. I heard Dead Mouse's Raise Your Weapon. That was my intake there.
Then you knew like, okay, this is it. This is what I love. And then what happened after that? Because you're from Boise, Idaho. I can imagine the scene is not really that big over there.
Yeah, well, I lived East Coast most of my life.
Okay.
And I moved to Boise, Idaho from the Washington, D.C. area in 2016. So I actually went to the same high school as Andrew Bear.
Okay.
Believe it or not. Yeah.
There was Berkeley? No?
No, Berkeley was his college.
Okay.
Gonzaga High School in D.C.
Now you have to do like the chant. What was the chant of the school? Like the mascot or something?
Gonzaga Eagles, I guess. Plug. Yeah, didn't expect to be bringing that up, but it's cool. Yeah.
Well, there you go. There's a thing there. Okay, so you fell in love with that dance, with Dead Mouse tune. From where on did you decide that you wanted to start making music, or did you start DJing?
I started making music right after that.
Okay, so you're inspired straight away to start making music.
Yeah. I mean, I sucked for a really long time. I started in 2010, 2011.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't get any records signed till 2018.
Yeah.
And even a little longer than that to hone the sound to the progressive house it is today. So,
why did it take so long?
I don't know.
Was it just like a side project besides everything else you were doing, or was it just that you needed a long time to get to the level that you were getting signed?
I think when I first got into dance music, I was very passionate about all the subgenres. Like I really liked drum and bass. I loved future bass. I loved house. I was into big room really heavily, and it just took me a long time to figure out who I was myself. I think.
So, what were your first steps in making music? Like you said, you started in 2010 making music. How did you approach starting out? Like, did you pick a DAW, or did you go to YouTube or get tutorials? Did you go to school for it, or?
Yeah, I mean, if we want to go all the way back, I made terrible dubstep on my phone.
On your phone?
Yeah, like there was like back when dubstep was blowing up as 2010, and they had like wobble dubstep apps on the phone.
Really?
Yeah. That was my first intro, and then I got into Ableton right after that. And it's been Ableton and Ableton YouTube tutorials since then. I mean, I know it really well now, but it took me a while to. Ableton's learning curve's pretty steep. So,
what was the most useful video that you saw into the whole process, or which YouTuber was helping you the most?
Yeah, there's this guy Zen World.
Oh yeah, he's amazing.
Yes, and he's still going strong. Yeah. And I've never seen a bad video from him. I've learned so much. So shout out Zen World. I don't think he knows.
Big shout out.
Yeah, he's great.
Yeah, he sent me a pack like a few weeks ago.
Oh, did he really?
Sounds. Yeah.
Nice.
I was like, holy shit, I'm getting a pack from Zen World. That's amazing.
He's great.
Yeah. He's really good. So if you want to learn more especially about synthesis, and if you love to work with Serum, he explains a lot of that stuff as well. Zen World on YouTube, but also on Instagram. So big shout out to Zen World. Okay, so you started making music. It took you a long time to get to releasing something. I wrote down, correct me if I'm wrong, that the first release was What You Want.
Yeah,
was that
wow.
the first one?
Yeah, going way back. Yeah,
like a poppy stuff. I don't know.
Poppy pluck house sort of. Yeah, it was a Poppy Pluckhouse record on Lowly Palace.
Yeah.
Back when they were doing the like sharp geometrical visualizer stuff. And then right after that, my second release.
Care No More.
Yeah, and that's like a
dubstep track.
Yeah, it's
sort
like
of
dubsteppy, trappy. It sounds like What So Not.
Yeah.
And truth be told, I did have Morgin releases before that, but it was pop and tropical house, and I was inspired by Odessa really early. But yeah, and then there's an early EP called Destinations right after that Lowly Palace hybrid stuff, where I started more like getting into it almost sounded like Rufus. back then.
How do you look back to those releases right now?
I'm proud of them. I think I could have spent more time on sound design and nuance and songwriting. Like they're very simple, but I definitely think that those releases had like the Morgin sauce of the vocal focused, big kind of moment feels.
Yeah.
I'm proud of them. I mean, I don't play them anymore.
No.
I didn't understand anything about clubs or how dance music functions in real life when I was making those. I was pretty much only focused on like playlisting and what was on the radio at the time. So
you were creating what was popular at the moment, sort of.
Yeah, well, I had no plan when I quit my job because I didn't want to have a backup. I wanted to make it work. So when I wasn't DJing when I first got into music and when those early releases were coming out. So I had no choice but to just kind of learn what worked.
Yeah. So to become a full-time musician, you mean?
Yeah.
That you had to, how do you call it? We call it over here, we call it a bread producer. That you have to create music to get your bread on the table.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Does it mean that you were ghostwriting, or what were you doing exactly to get everything going? Because it's a big step. And I know a lot of people that are listening right now are maybe on that moment that they have to decide, like,
right,
am I going to dive in or am I going to continue what I'm doing?
Yeah, I got really lucky in a lot of ways because when I first launched the project, there was this song called Better Days that isn't under Morgin anymore. I shifted it to a different name, but I completely indie released it and it got pretty nice Spotify playlist ads. And so that helped me pay my rent. I got on the radio on SiriusXM like pretty early as well on Chill. So that helped.
Chill was a massive playlist to land. Sirius Chill. Yeah.
Yeah. Shout out to Callie Dre who plugged that early on and Ben Harvey. They really helped me a lot. And I have done a fair amount of like ghost production and ghost writing over the years too. And it was rough at the start. I was kind of living like a priest for a while. Definitely. Like no eating out, none of that.
But I guess that's the proper dedication that you need to show sometimes, because a lot of people think like if you're standing on a stage, and not everybody is an industry plant. Right. That's just how it is. So I know a lot of people that went through the same situation, that you had to decide at a certain point, okay, this is the moment that I have to go continue my office job for the rest of my life, or I'm gonna just dive deep in and see how far it can go. Like, what is the worst that can happen, to be honest?
Yeah, you got to try.
Yeah. If you don't succeed, then a year later you can find another job, or 2 years later.
Yeah.
It just depends how long you can keep on going, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, you really got to love it. I mean, there are times when I look back on the 9 to 5. I think everybody who gets into the music industry kind of, like once you're far enough in, you look back and you're like, well, grass is always greener and you miss this and that. Because it takes so much drive to stay around in the music industry for more than 5 years.
Yeah.
So there's that, but I'm just really proud of where I am and I'm comfortable with it. And yeah, it's been great.
I can imagine. The first 4/4 track, 4 on the Floor track that I could find was Sensational Love.
Oh yeah.
So that was after the whole plucky poppy stuff. That's how you call it, I guess. And the dubstep trap kind of things. It was released on We Are Diamond.
Yes.
What made you decide to step away from the plucky poppy stuff to 4/4?
Okay, so this is going to be a little unexpected. My favorite stuff in dance music has always been like the old school Cascade Deadmau5 sound. That's what got me into it. For a while, I kind of drifted away and I was more in that poppy sort of as a plucky kind of stuff going on. But I remember specifically, because those releases came out in 2018. Yeah. I remember, this is super random, but Grand Theft Auto put a nightclub update into GTA 5.
Yeah.
And you can run your own nightclub and you can choose which DJ goes in the nightclub. And I remember designing the nightclub.
I remember.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember designing the club and then hiring Solomon in the game. And also like, I think Dixon is in there.
Yeah.
Tale of Us is in there. And I remember hiring them and then seeing them play in the game. And I was like, why did I ever get away from the melodic house kind of thing?
Yeah.
And I started making it again, and then it just like I never stopped. It kind of
that's where it clicked again. That must be a big moment. Otherwise, you would have stuck around on the poppy plucky stuff.
Yeah, I think I also realized
the more I say it, the more funny it gets. To be honest.
Yeah, it's kind of era specific. I mean, I think I also just in tandem with that, I started to realize during my early shows that the poppy plucky sort of stuff just wasn't. it doesn't work live like you think it will,
Yeah.
unless you're doing an actual live set.
Yeah. Then it becomes like a proper concert, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, that
Yeah,
makes
exactly.
makes a lot of sense. After that, in 2019, I wrote down the Lender releases, like Spite.
Yeah, so I think it's listed under Lander just because I was working with a label called Suave, who are still around.
Okay.
I moved over from We Are Diamond to Suave, and they had like some really great melodic house like playlisting and stuff,
Yeah.
and they kind of just let me do my own thing with like the art direction. And that song Spite Dusk at It was the first time I delved into like directly referencing the 2010 era of prog, like the old Cascade stuff. Like you can hear it in that one.
Yeah. There was like something that you were saying to yourself, okay, this is the sound that I'm heading to, following by a release on Create, already know. And what I really saw as well is that your release with Ono on Songspire.
Yes.
That's the first time that you ventured into deep house with Fragment, Pongread, and Long Road to Eden.
Yeah, that was a
Tell us about how did you get in contact with Ono, because I know Ono used to work here at Amada as an A&R. He was a fantastic guy. Do you still remember signing those tracks to him, and how did it go?
It was awesome. I just loved and I still do love the Songspire.
It's amazing, such a great label. Yeah,
It's incredible. Yeah, and there's he's just got a really good taste in that sort of like, it's club music, but it's also kind of chill and melodic.
Mm-hmm.
And I was working on Fragment and Pomegranate with Meeting Molly in, it was like late 2019, kind of after that Spite track came out. And I just found Ono's email, sent it over, and I think those two EPs, those two double singles on Songspire were where the current sort of like modern Morgin Madison sound started to
I
really
think so
take
too.
shape.
Because when I was listening to the music, that's the moment where I was like, okay, this is something I can vibe with. I like this.
Yeah.
This is cool. After that, a big moment, because it's really hard to get signed to a label of the magnitude of this, Mousetrap.
Yeah.
How did you get signed to Mousetrap? Because, like I said, there's not a lot of releases on that label, first of all, and mostly they are from Deadmau5.
Yeah.
So tell us about, how did you get in touch with Joel or the label?
Yeah, so what initially happened was my first ever manager, his name's Rain Robinson. He used to work at Heroic Group, San Holo, Drolo folks. And I had DM'd him on LinkedIn in like 2017. And then we regrouped later when I started putting out Pomegranate and those ones on Songspire, and he was interested in the project. And I had what would later become the Some Nights EP, my debut release on Mousetrap. I had that laying around, and that was actually meant for This Never Happened. And Daniel Lane liked it, but it was just kind of lukewarm for a little bit. And then my manager Rain was like, "Hey, I know Emily at Mousetrap. They have some stuff like Atlas over there. Let me just shoot a shot and see what happens." And then they played it for everybody, and they said, "Let's just try a new sound." And that's how the Some Nights EP came around on Mousetrap. And
what happened when you got the feedback from the label? Do you still remember that your manager was probably calling you like, "Hey, I showed the EP, or showed the tunes to Mousetrap," and what happened?
Yeah, they actually that EP had been worked over a good amount, just going back and forth with Lane 8's side initially, and
okay. His A&R feedback came in. And
those records had been worked so hard that I think they had like 2 adjustments, but other than that, the rest of the EP was gold. It was good.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was cool. It was cool.
Yeah. And of course, the album that followed on that as well, Living the Phantasm. Even releasing an album on a label like that must have been impactful for your career as well. Did you notice like a big difference on, let's say, the beginning of 2020 and the end of 2020?
Yeah, so Living the Phantasm that album's the only reason I'm here.
Yeah.
That album's crazy because COVID hit, and I was gonna quit music. I just decided on quitting music.
Yeah.
And when I had decided that, there just wasn't, there was no hope of the pandemic ending, and it was a really awkward time for everybody in music.
Yeah.
And when I decided I was going to quit, I just got really creative, and I made that whole Living the Phantasm album just exactly what I wanted to do. Like there's ambient on it, there's electro on it, there's trance on it, There's old progressive house on it. I just tried everything that meant a lot to me. And then, I, as a wild card, just sent it over to Mousetrap, and Joel actually like really, really, really loved it.
Wow.
And that was kind of like when that album got signed, that was in 2020, and it released in spring 2021.
Yeah.
And that was kind of what tripped the trigger in terms of like, that was when I started working with 720 for some management stuff. And then I got thrown into the Dead Mouse touring world and seeing that really fast. And that took like years of my life, and it was a really special moment because without that album, I wouldn't even be doing.
But it was still in the middle of the COVID period that you were doing, like, could have been a lot more shows out of it, of course, or
right.
But in the end, it was something that triggered everything that you were, like you said, you're sitting here right now because of that album, probably. Then,
yeah.
What would have you been doing if you stopped making music? Did you already think about that?
I don't know. It was such a weird time. I think everyone had so much anxiety. I didn't know what to do with my life because it felt like
The purpose was gone suddenly.
Yeah. And it felt like even if the music worked, like I couldn't tour it. You know, there was nothing. It was like, what is it? You know, what am I doing here? And I remember what ended up happening was a couple of records from Living the Phantasm went to radio, and like two different ones went #1 on 2 different stations. And it kind of saved my whole career. But before that, I was just kind of spiraling. I remember like just taking random shots. Like my now wife and I are walking through the mall, and I was like, Pottery Barn sounds cool. And like I walked into the Pottery Barn and like was like, you guys have an application? And they were so confused. And then I think I was gonna also work at the Humane Society during that time at one point, saving animals. And I don't know what I would have done.
That would have been a nice one also, though.
Yeah.
Maybe for the future.
Yeah, absolutely. It's got such a soft spot for me. So
that's amazing. That's good to hear. 2023 from the start. And I wrote this down from your biography. A melodic club record that went straight into the top 10 Billboard Dance Top 40 and set at #1 on Sirius XM BPM for 3 weeks straight. That must have been something else also, because this is another step forward from the album.
Yeah, I had one Sirius XM BPM #1 with Far From Home.
Yeah.
But that was in 2021, and it hit #1 for like one weekend. I had never really seen, like, my previous single Drifter kind of hung around Billboard Dance Top 10, but it just kind of hovered. But from the start was just kept getting rinsed. And what's interesting was because that was the first record that I had sent to Enhanced, and Will over at Enhanced was like, I just really believe in this record. And I was like, I think I do too. Because that was from the start was like, that's probably the iconic Morgin Madison track now. Everything, it's pretty clear. Everything after that sounds one way. Everything before that kind of sounds another
all over the
way.
place.
Yeah. So
that makes a lot of sense, because that's why I brought it up. That was the first release that you did with Enhanced, which has been the home for your releases the last 2 years, I think. Year and a half. And now your album is coming out, Odyssey.
Yeah.
Tell us about the process from the first track that you signed to Enhanced to making the decision that you want to do an album together with the team.
Yeah, so it's a wild one. I had been working on portions of what would become Odyssey since even during the Living the Phantasm era. Like, there's a track called Limit Break on there that has just been worked and reworked and reworked. And now it's like this crazy prog trance acid techno thing. But I think what happened was when From the Start started popping off, and then we just started working on tracks, I think there's a really good synergy between me and the team. They kind of let me do what I like to do, and then they come in and say, how about we hone it here and hone it here? And I just became really comfortable with it. And then late 2023, we're all on a Zoom and floated the idea of an album. And I was like, I have this concept and of a big project, and I have some songs I've been working on for a long time, but I also love the new era of songs that we've been honing together. Let's fuse it all together into what would become Odyssey. So
that's right. Maybe it's nice to have Lewis here from your team as well.
Yeah.
From Enhanced to talk a little bit about the album, because I'm always fascinated about the process and decision to start doing an album. You can join in if you want to. There we go. Does it work?
There he is.
There he is.
Yeah. Very loud.
Very loud. You can turn it down a little bit. So, do you still remember hearing your first Morgin Madison record that you came in? By the way, Lewis, of course, enhanced A&R.
I think the first I think the first Morgin track I heard from the album was the one that we ended up dropping at the start of the year, Tell Me Who You Are.
Yeah.
Which kind of isn't an album single, but sort of is an album single. We've kind of detached it from the whole album process, but it's now become like the sort of lead single from the album.
Yeah.
And it was kind of the perfect follow-up to From the Start. It had that same kind of nice big prog energy, big vocal, essentially everything that we want to do on that label. And
so
stood out so much.
What is your role now in the whole process of the album? Did you start from the beginning, for like the very first beginning that you decided to start doing an album? You were like, okay, we're going to jump on this and then we can start creating stuff together.
I think you'd kind of already taken a lot of the ideas, put them to a reasonably fleshed out point, and brought them to us in one go. If I remember rightly, we kind of had this big batch of like, these are tracks that could go on the album. Some of them were more fleshed out than others, and then we kind of dissected. Okay, this is what we want to work for the album.
It was over 20.
Yeah,
for sure.
There's quite a lot.
It started out as like, I remember sending it to you, and some of our early references were like, we have these big records that we work together, like From the Start, Tell Me Who You Are, and Feel Alive. And then I remember sending you like there's some left field stuff in the batch, and you were kind of like, well, that's interesting. And I was like, well, if we think about it, like Damage Control or something from Matt Zoe, or these albums that kind of stick around and really do something a little different. Mm-hmm. And then what we ended up coming to is a nice balance of that. I think you had some really, really, really strong A&R on like the dance tracks, and then I came up with a couple of the interludes and ambient pieces, and I think it really became cohesive.
Yeah. So how do you decide which track? Because in the end, you're working it as a product as well, because you need to market it and make sure that it becomes successful. How do you go into these tracks, that all the bunch of the tracks that he sends in, and decide like, okay, we're going to do this one, we're going to do this one, we're not going to do this one? What is the thought process? Is it like a group decision, or how do I have to see that?
It's always we've got 4 people who make all of the A&R decisions collectively.
Really?
So myself, Will, Adam, aka Farius, and Oliver as well. And it's always very much, we want to get a general consensus from the group. It's not one person comes in and likes it and we just run with it. It's all very sort of collaborative and democratic.
But what if you don't agree on something?
Then we'll
fight.
Talk it out.
Verbally give each other one. Normally I think we're all reasonably on the same page a lot of the time. I think with this album in particular, because a lot of artists are very defined in one sound, and that's always been their sound, and that will always be their sound. But obviously, like you've discussed, it's a little bit different. There's a lot more inspiration drawn in from elsewhere, and it's trying to find that balance of, let's do the big prog Morgin sound that everybody has proved to love in terms of From the Start and Tell Me Who You Are, but then let's also take bits from the Mousetrap era and these other inspirations that come out of random events that you've been to, and you're like, I just want to make this track. Like, there was a drum and bass track in there at one point, because it's like, why not? Let's just give it a shot. Yeah. And it didn't end up making the final cut, but that's what we were trying to sort of toe the line between.
That's the nice thing about doing an album, though. You can do something else than you normally don't do. Like, not everything needs to be a single, but you also need to make sure that not everything becomes a filler.
Yeah.
So there's a fine line between everything.
Healthy balance.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I guess but it's a hard decision to tell an artist also, like, hey, we like this one, but maybe it's not for the album.
Yeah. And there were a few tough chats of you really feeling certainly strong about certain ones and us feeling really strong about others, and obviously trying to find the compromise where everybody gets what they want on this album.
How do you react to that, Morgin? Like to our A&R feedback? Because I have this discussion with other artists as well. Like, and some of the artists don't take any advice into consideration whatsoever, and other ones are really listening on what's the input is of other people.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's interesting sometimes. Sometimes I think that a song is great, like when I'm in that like honeymoon phase with it.
Yeah.
But I've realized over the years that my self-awareness in terms of what's actually like a 10 out of 10 or 9 out of 10 great record is sometimes a little off base. For real?
Yeah.
So like some Lewis would hear some stuff. He'd be like, "Why don't you just sit on that and like we'll assess that one in a couple weeks." And I'd come around and I'd be like,
that's how you bring it.
Yeah.
Put it down for a little bit and think about it.
Yeah.
A few
Well,
weeks.
it's true because I'm so close to the work that it, of course, it sounds great, but you do want to give it space, and it's nice to have all those ears. And you guys have been doing this for so long, and there's such a plethora of experience with your
Especially
A&R.
if it's 4 guys listening to your music.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it all had to get through it. And I feel lucky because I do think that I got a lot of leeway to try stuff. But at the end of the day, it's like it has to get through the. Everyone has to have that like wow moment sensation when listening to the demos, and then it's got to get through the quality bar too in terms of like just the sound and the actual songwriting and taking segments in and out and what's the purpose of space here or there. And yeah, I think between all 5 of us, it's gotten to a really killer spot. So,
which track would not be on the album if it wasn't for you?
Ooh, if it wasn't for me, I'm not sure.
Wait, so like which one would you take off? Is that?
No. Which track would not be existing if it wasn't for your input? For example, I did a compilation for Enhanced, and if it wasn't for the vocals that they were delivered to me, for example, they would not exist. They would not be there. So,
that's a tricky one. I don't know if there's any that I like so hardly advocated for that they only made it on there for that reason. I think it's such a group decision that it's normally there's already a couple of us, and if there's not a couple of us, then it's not democratic, and we park it to one side and maybe come back to it.
Okay, fair enough. Well, thank you for jumping in, Lewis, and explaining a little bit more. So Odyssey, it's out this weekend, and you already told a little bit on there that the whole idea behind Odyssey is, that its life is going through ups and downs. Can you tell a little bit more about your life that led up to the album?
Yeah, absolutely. It kind of ties into my first album because since that album's the reason I'm here, what happened was that album found some unexpected success and some real diehard fans that still listen to it and attach with that era. Mm-hmm. And once I got picked up and I got put on some tour dates, what ended up happening was I went from basically total isolation and just a nobody to playing like
massive crowds.
Yeah, it was like weird. I'm super grateful for it, but I don't think I was mentally ready to just go right into Red Rocks or Echo Stage, or like, for instance, like 2 months after the album was out, I played a 2.5 hour set at Brooklyn Mirage.
Wow.
You know, and so I didn't know.
That's an impressive venue to play. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know how to perceive that. And it was always a dream, right? But I was a little bit older than when I first had that dream because, you know, the me that was picturing playing those venues was 17. And then all these years later, I'd already decided on quitting, but then all this stuff starts happening 6 months after. And that sort of like cycle of having these oh wow moments and then going back to my hotel room alone or going home and having a total like dopamine dump.
Yeah.
And then trying to figure out how do we keep developing the Morgin music to like try at least to match the scale of stuff that was happening. That was like a mental challenge for me. And so I just, for like a period of years there, I just never felt grounded enough to evolve the project creatively to my liking. There were some really killer releases, but it feels like only recently that I've been able to do that. And that's
to
what
feel comfortable in what you're doing and releasing what you want to release.
Yeah, I mean, it really only recently. Like 2022 is only like 5-6 releases. And 2023 is when we first linked up and we did a few singles. But I think in 2023 I was just grinding, trying to get track to track. I think it was a track every 2.5 weeks.
Yeah,
between remixes. And so yeah, Odyssey's just about that journey the last few years and really like being present again.
Yeah, finding your balance in everything, I guess.
Yeah.
I think a lot of artists struggling with what you're saying right now, like especially the dopamine hits, that it's really hard to explain because you cannot really explain. And you have the same thing that you stand on the stage and suddenly half an hour later, literally you're in a hotel room by yourself. And then you cannot explain this to people that don't have the same experience, I think, because you're such a high and then you're by yourself suddenly. And your mind cannot cope with that. We're not made to work like that.
Yeah, it really is like those kind of like endorphin rushes really are like their own kind of drug. It's not something I like seek out, but I feel like everyone who's a producer and DJ that gets into it for an extended period of time, I feel like deals with that. It affects certain people certain ways. You know, like Tiesto's still ripping it every single day. That seems to be totally fine with it, and that's awesome. I think for me, like, it would be dishonest to not say how it started to affect me, even at just a small to moderate scale. Yeah. And so, that's what the album's about. And
that's amazing. So you brought in the experience that you got through there and created your music out of that inspiration. That's Odyssey.
Yeah, that's what Odyssey's about. I took a break. I stopped trying to hack social media. I just was posting memes and like chilling out. And that took a long time to just craft the music and work really hard to create something really artistic. Artistic.
God. Something else.
Yeah. Sorry, I've been up for like 30 hours.
Yeah, it's fine. You're doing good.
Yeah. And it's like, it's just a really great project that I'm passionate about. We developed an amazing art direction. It's just a really genuine project. We have an amazing vinyl rolling out, and
31st of August. Wrote it down. Pre-order is up on the Enhanced website. I saw it already. Ding ding.
Yeah.
Commercial break. There you go.
Appreciate it.
Well, Odyssey. I've heard. Well, everyone heard quite a bit of it already on the State of Trance if you listen to the guest mix. So if you haven't, make sure to check the album. 100%. A lot of questions actually came in from fans as well. So let's dive into that. Cade Cyanide wants to know, what song of the Odyssey album are you looking forward to playing in your live set? What is the one that you cannot wait to drop?
Probably Limit Break. It's like
with the acid drop.
It was the one with the acid and the techno rumble, and then the second half is just that ridiculously heavy sustained bass. And we worked a lot with like Bruce, the mix mastering engineer, on that one to get it just sitting as heavy as possible without like totally tearing the limiter off. And
I can understand that that's the one that you want to play.
Yeah.
I think the intro track that you played,
Illithid's March. Illithid's March.
That's definitely I think one of the first drops you really like. The nice groove in there. I really like that one.
Yeah, it's like super intimate, but also super heavy.
Yeah.
But also ethereal on the top. And huge shout out to my friend Villager and the singer Pastel on that one. We all met, or Villager and I met on my Twitch streams a few years back, and that track's been in the works for a while. So,
are you still doing Twitch streams nowadays?
Yeah. I took a break over the last year, just like a mental break, and also while I was making the album. But now I'm back like every Wednesday that I can, just reviewing any tracks that anybody sends in to my Discord and Whip Wednesdays. I don't even vet them or listen first, which is sometimes a mistake, but it's great.
I've done that too. It's a lot of fun.
It's cool.
Sometimes you hear tunes like, you cannot even call it music, but I have to say sometimes people send in stuff and you're like, wow, how are you not discovered yet? Some people are so good and they just don't have the luck or the right connections, or, well, it helps a lot to get that going as well.
Yeah, it's crazy. There's some actual geniuses out there that just love to make music, and they don't market themselves. They just like sit back and make masterpieces.
Yeah. Are you doing the same in the Enhanced Discord as well sometimes? Demo drops?
Less so than maybe we could do, but we also still really actively monitor the demo inboxes anyway. So I guess kind of, but not through Discord.
Okay. Well, it's a good way to connect with people anyway, but the Enhanced Discord is really nice as well. Just Party wants to know what has been the favorite venue to play at so far. Red Rocks. I knew it.
Yeah.
Easy one.
That was crazy.
I think that's on the bucket list of every single DJ on this planet.
Yeah. It was me, Nero, and then Cascade, and then Deadmau5.
Wow.
And they gave me a full hour set, and they just let me play whatever I wanted to play. And it's up on my SoundCloud. It's a pretty hellacious set. I don't know if I'll be playing a set like that again. It was wild. Had a blast. It was amazing.
That's one of those things that you never forget. That's for sure. Wrenchcrafted wants to know, who's your favorite artist at the moment?
Oh man. God. Probably there's a synthwave band called The Midnight.
Okay, yeah.
Big fan.
Yeah. Really?
Yeah, it's great.
They have this album called Monsters, which is it's not their most popular album, but I think it's like an actual flawless album. I have the vinyl at home, and my wife and I have just been bumping it for like a year.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a good answer. Sonic Buster wants to know, did you miss the job you did before becoming an artist at all? If yes, why? What was your job before coming into the music industry?
No, I don't miss it. And I don't bring this up a lot anymore because the more I age, the more I realize it's kind of like janky. But I had a stint in lobbying. And then, yeah, I can't.
Lobbying is?
Yeah, it's like, so companies will hire a lobbyist basically is they're hired to be aware of what's happening on the legislative front in like either a state capital or the federal level. They're basically, you hire lobbyists to influence. No one wants to say it. Yeah, no one wants to say it this way. Basically, what a lobbyist is, you hire them to influence policy. Okay. Yeah. Kind of.
Well, that's, I guess in Washington, that's a big job as well.
Yeah, and some people not define it that way. I definitely could have nuanced that a little more, but
I understand what you mean.
Yeah.
So you don't miss that job at all, I can imagine.
No, I would dare to say I like highly disagreed with. The more I saw, I didn't think the practice of it was particularly good. I was okay at it, and I think there's going to always be a future there, but it was not helping my soul. Say that.
I can imagine that as well. Yeah. Scott Landmark wants to know, what do you do to relax?
Play a lot of video games, like a lot. Been playing a lot of Diablo 4. My wife and I love to go to breweries around Boise.
Nice.
It's a big brewery town. And I like to lift weights. I do every day, and then that's about it. I don't know. Pretty simple guy. So,
well, why not? What do you do, Louis, to relax besides listening to a lot of music and doing your shows as well?
I got into running last year.
Okay.
And I've been like pretty obsessed with it since. So
running can be very addictive.
Yeah, it's a good way to clear your head, but less so in maybe London or Amsterdam where it's constantly raining. It's, not perfect.
Makes sense. And Stats10 wants to know if there's any tours coming in the near future.
Yeah, I'm working on some more like intimate, smaller venue type of tours to make it like more of like a fan-focused experience. I really did want to, like, as part of like the whole Odyssey arc, I really did want to take a break from that, not just going show to show and taking gigs just to take gigs.
Cherry pick them, yeah.
Yeah, cherry pick them more, and also just do them for a reason and have maybe a theme and do something cool with it. But yeah, working on some focused ideas.
I love it, like, at least for my experience, that the US, like every little city has a very tight community of progressive and trance lovers at the moment right now. So the tours that I'm doing as well are like small clubs, intimate. People know the music, and I'm really loving it, to be honest. Instead of only playing the massive stages that you have to cater to people really there, or how do you say, you cannot really tell your own story. You have to tell the story to the broad audience. And I think the long sets that clubs allow in America right now is really nice. Even though like it's a struggling market at a certain point, but
yeah, it's interesting. I think being from a more rural state, I think America's usually 5. I mean, you guys know this, being from Europe, is like America's always behind like a good 5 years on the average person. I think a lot of bass music's super popular over there, and if it's not bass music, it's like something unique and experimental, like a Madeon or an Odessa, or Seven Lions. And what I do like though is when you find trance or progressive or deep house people that are really into it, they're like really into it. Yeah. It feels like a club almost, and then there's almost no in between, you know? So people that are like super, super into it and will follow you for a long time, or it's people that don't really care about it.
Yeah. I do think that, correct me if I'm wrong, that Corona or the COVID period changed everything a lot in the whole world of club scene and also in America, because before that, I feel, if you look at the lineup of EDC, for example, before Corona, there was a lot of international artists, and after Corona, there's more American artists as well. Also on the main stages, on prime slots, like John Summit, for example, coming in and just killing it.
Yeah.
Is there more space for American artists, or is it just because the market was, how do you say it, local for a while, that international artists couldn't come in, that the American artists finally got a break?
Yeah, I think the whole scene is just more open now, and I think it's moving towards a more artist-centric thing, like you're just your own thing. And I really do like what John Summit's been doing, because he started as like a tech house bro, and now has like the biggest progressive house hits on the planet. And because what he's doing, his biggest songs are prog house. Yeah, and I think that's really cool. I think that's really healthy.
Very trancey as well.
Yeah, and even the whole new album is there's no real tech house on there at all. It's just really tasteful, melodic stuff. And there's some tracks on there that even have like the enhanced vibe going.
100%. Yeah. I agree with that. C. Wilhelm 93 wants to know, what's your favorite plugin at the moment?
I really like Arturia Mini V3.
Okay.
Just for leads. Like there's a custom Morgin lead in like a lot of my tracks that it's on Tell Me Who You Are from the start, and Closer, and a lot of the new album that's just like one lead. It just has so much texture and automation on it that I use it in almost every song.
It's alive.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, the last question. Finally made this. Wants to know, which song of the album was the most difficult to make?
Oh man.
Which one took you the longest? Maybe. Or did you sit on the longest?
Longest in terms of time in the actual project is
frustration.
Limit Break.
Limit Break
is the longest time. Frustration is like Get to Fly, because that one
Lewis agrees.
Yeah, I remember us going back and forth, because it was like, does this even work as an idea? Because it goes from like an ambient sort of intro, and then it's breakbeat, and then it goes into this huge super saw isolated break, and then it's kind of prog trance at the end, and then it tapers off into an ambient outro that concludes the album. And us working together to get that right was interesting, because I don't really make prog trance records. And I remember sending that to you, and you were like, we need some more movement in the chords. And I was like, I hadn't even thought of that. Yeah, just dispersing up the chords.
That one changed a lot, didn't it? Because I think the first album batch that you sent over, it was 2 breakbeat drops, and it was like, this feels like a really nice sort of, tail off to the album. Whereas then it ended up being, no, let's go up again. Let's go up one more level. Let's bring this kind of like old school enhanced prog trance flavor into what starts off as a breakbeat tune, which is just so left field, to mix those two and really hammer it as much as you have done. So I think it's a real statement piece to end an album with, especially when there's 16 tracks. You need a big track to finish it off and keep people engaged.
Yeah, and repeat the album again.
Yeah,
exactly. Makes sense. It's also probably a good closer of your sets, like a good, good encore.
That was the one that was last today, and it was great. And I think for us, like, I was doing that thing where I was posting clips of the songs we were working on, like as we were going, and some of them didn't make it. But I remember posting the big super saw moment at the end or whatever, towards the end of the track, and the response was like, "What the hell is that? Like, you have to release that," from like a lot of people. And, it's hard to gauge that response sometimes, but we just stuck with it, and really glad we did. So.
Amazing. Well, thank you for answering all these questions also, Lewis. Morgin Madison in the studio today for A State of Trance. For the podcast, thank you once again. Make sure to check Odyssey. It's out now. And if you want to have the vinyl, it's coming in August. Thank you for watching this podcast. If you liked it, make sure to like and subscribe and leave your comments. And I'll see you next time for a new one. Bye.
Thank you for tuning in. Check all previous episodes on YouTube or your favorite podcast portal.